welcome back, Kip Harding. I must have done something right because you're back in the hot seat. Kip Harding's from Red Consulting International. I called you the tax guru last time. I call you Tax Yoda today. How's that?
I'm not sure which is better, which is worse. But I'll accept. Thank you anyway, Tanya. Thank you anyway.
That's all right. So today we're talking about buying a property in a trust, and I'm really going to put that over to you in terms of your thoughts. It sounds like a great idea. What are the fors and against?
Yeah, it's a very traditional thing for Australians to do, particularly where you'd like to hand a property down through the generations. So the backdrop for trust ownership is really about estate planning and family continuance. So if you as a person own a property you'd like to keep in the family, normally not your principal place of residence, but certainly another home or an investment property or even commercial property, you find that a trust is a very useful place to put it, because it means that in the event of your passing, there won't be this need to reset and have the property disposed of effectively and have a beneficiaries trying to own a part of a property. The trust will continue to own it. There are also some tax benefits as well, which I think most of your listeners will be familiar with. The ability to distribute income in a discretionary trust, and in a unit trust, often the ability to get superannuation involved as well. So all of those items go hand in hand to say, look, it's a pretty sensible thing to do in Australia. It's very uncommon in the rest of the world. So what's become clear, however, is that over time, certain other jurisdictions have invested in Australian property inside a trust in order to take advantage of the trust rules. And there has been quite a lot of tax avoidance around this area with certain jurisdictions. And as a result of that, they've decided, well, we're going to have to start to push back on this issue, because the one thing we don't want to see is tax avoidance with trust income being distributed offshore and we can never tax it. The SRO then has come in over the top of State Revenue Office and said, well, what we'll do is we'll make sure that if you buy something in a trust, we'll in cooperation with the ATO or underlying cooperation, we'll charge you an additional stamp duty. And similarly to the other charges you've now heard of, that's another 8%. So 30.5% stamp duty to acquire a property in a trust if it's a foreign trust. Now that's normally understood. Foreign trust in most people's mind would mean you or I live in Hong Kong, Singapore, London, New York. We run the trust. We're overseas. It's a foreign trust. We invest. But what they've decided to do, which is a really, really unusual thing, but certainly something to be aware of, and a lot of legal firms have put some interesting information out about how to test this, is if in your trust deed, any beneficiary is non-resident, then it will be deemed to be a foreign trust.
Okay, so let's say that there's 3 in my trust. And my brother, who's not existent because I'm an only child, but my brother that goes over to America and decides to become a resident there in the trust we set up 10 years ago,
yeah,
we're all effectively...
So then you're...
Correct?
It's even more... Your brother's a good example, but even a more unsurprising example would be a child, an adult child, goes to do, 2 years in London. As part of their normal gap type experience,
right?
They will trigger the trust to become a foreign trust. So if during that period you were to acquire an investment property of any sort, then technically, and subject to how the SRO would find out, but they're certainly looking at doing audit processes on this, because the ATO know the resident has left, the SRO know you bought a property, they match it up, you'll get an audit.
Okay, so we spoke in the last episode that we had together about the taxes involved, the capital gains tax involved with people that go overseas. Would that apply here?
No, I think at this stage it's only going to be the stamp duty piece. Okay. But if you're treated as a foreign trust, then there's also the risk that there's ongoing land tax as well. So I guess the question here is, and what we've had to do, even for some people we know very well, you often don't know, as you quite rightly point out, what their siblings are doing, because most trust deeds are quite broad. You can
Right.
distribute to your parents if they're with you. You can distribute across to your siblings, sometimes to your cousins,
Yes.
and you can distribute down to your children and to your grandchildren.
Yeah.
So there's a broad group, any one of whom, if they're deemed under these rules to qualify as foreign, could trigger the fact that you're up for an 8% surcharge when you buy a property.
Quick question. They go to London for the gap year. When they come back, does everything resume as normal?
Correct. So when they go to London for a gap year, you have to exclude them as a beneficiary if you're about to buy something in a trust. So not dissimilar to, and I know it's an unpopular topic, but in the event of someone's relationship breaking apart, a marriage falling apart, in the event one party wants to keep the trust and the other party doesn't want, you would therefore agree with your ex-partner that they would be an excluded beneficiary from the trust in the event of anything else happening later on, such as your death.
Right.
So it's a really, really interesting one that's got certainly the legal fraternity up in arms about, well, how are you supposed to do this? But also, I know many clients keep everything about their companies and they've got all their financial statements and all that sort of thing. But the number of people I've come across is look at me and say, I don't know where that trust deed ever went. So you've got to find your trust deed. Keep that trust deed somewhere safe. So you've got to put your special spot.
And be careful who you jump into a trust with.
Exactly. I know it's a bit of a change of how people look at things, but I think from your perspective, and particularly when you're working from where you are, Tonya, it's well worth, and anyone in your side of the industry, when people are approaching you to acquire a property, and they're saying, hey, I think we'll put it in our trust.
Yes.
It should hopefully be only a 2-minute issue, but
I had a lady recently, and really you've got to get an expert team around you. And when she's talking about moving from overseas and putting it in certain names, you're the expert on that. She needs to consult you. Obviously, my expertise is in the property arena. So I think having a really well educated, very knowledgeable team around you is going to stand you in good stead, longevity wise.
And plus save you a lot of money, one hopes, because even a $500,000 property, that's a $40,000 surcharge.
Yeah.
$40,000 just because something was not correct in a trust deed, which you can fix in 30 minutes at a legal office.
Yeah.
In fact, you could probably fix it yourself. It's that easy.
And that's a $500,000 property.
Yeah. So if you're buying a $2 million property in a trust, or you're buying a fantastic estate, country home, beach house, that sort of thing, which you could do yourself a lot of damage accidentally, and you've done it for the right reasons. You want to put in the trust so you can continue to pass it down the line, and that's your estate planning, but it's easy to come unstuck.
Okay. Look, that's good food for thought. Thanks for chatting with us today, Kip.
You're welcome, Tonya.